It's Wrestling Wednesday here on TheAdiposeTV, and in our second match today we are looking at a genuine bona fide classic. WrestleMania 13, Bret the Hitman Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin in a match which some people regard as the birth of the Attitude Era. Grab a chair as I take you through wrestling history with some great gameplay as well. Well, greetings ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Wrestling Wednesday. This is my second offering for today, and I want to do a bit of a series looking at the history of the Attitude Era, which is the era that I grew up in. And to do that, we're going to start off with a match which some people argue is the birth of the Attitude Era, or the turning point in the WWF as it then was, which is Bret Hart versus Stone Cold at WrestleMania 13 with, and at that point, normal wrestler Ken Shamrock as the guest referee. It was a non-DQ submission match, and it was a very important match for several reasons. Firstly, it was one of the few good matches at WrestleMania 13. 13 and 9 are kind of widely known as some of the worst WrestleManias, but this in 13 definitely was the shining highlight. It was an absolutely outstanding match between two men at the peak of their powers. Stone Cold at this point hadn't suffered the neck injury that would hamper him for the rest of his career, and Bret Hart, of course, being pre-Survivor Series 1997, was still wrestling on all cylinders. But the problem is that Bret Hart had been in the championship picture for quite a long time, as had people like Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, who won the belt at this particular event, and they weren't drawing on top in terms of like money and things like that. They put on absolutely outstanding matches, and if you look back through the kind of era of like 94, 95, 96, there are some fantastic main events there, but in terms of drawing money, they were a lot lower than the Hogan era, which had come before, which is one of the reasons why people like Bret Hart never held the title for very long. Or why people during this era, in fact, the two longest reigning champions are Yokozuna and Kevin Nash, because the Vince and the powers that be behind the scenes were always looking for the next Hulk Hogan, the leading light that could carry the WWF financially. Now, along into that mix comes Stone Cold Steve Austin, who arrived in the WWF as the Ringmaster, and he was a brand new type of hero. He was the anti-hero. He wasn't one of these guys that kind of said, hooray, let me kiss the baby, let me smile lots, let me wave, let me tell you about being good. He wasn't the guy that said no to cheating. He wasn't the guy that said that everything had to be done the right way and all that kind of stuff. He was a no good, cheating, distrustful, swearing, cursing son of a you-know-what. And somehow he started connecting with the fans in a way that hadn't been seen before, and it was perhaps a sign of the times, a change in the sociological makeup of America and places around the world. But he started getting cheered a lot more than the goody-goody Bret Hart. And in this match, you'll see here that these two are basically going move for move, head to head. Whatever Bret hits Stone Cold with, Stone Cold comes back with something more or less the same. Bret Hart unable to gain an advantage here. Now, Vince realised or noticed this change in response to his heroes, so he decided in this match to do the unthinkable, a double turn. Bret Hart was to go heel, the righteous, non-cheating role model was to go bad, and Stone Cold, the anti-hero, was to go face. And this was achieved by having Bret Hart turn kind of bitter and twisted against the reaction he was getting. And very, very memorably, at the end of this match, in the real one, Bret Hart wins via submission, but after the match continues putting a hurting on Austin until Ken Shamrock kind of pushes him off and kind of gets involved a little bit there. But because Stone Cold at the conclusion of the match refuses to give up despite being in the sharpshooter, And one of the other things that they were doing as well at this point was allowing blood to be seen on TV a little bit more as well. And I mean, back in the 80s and early 90s, if someone started bleeding in a match on WWF TV, the camera would kind of quickly cut away, or it would just be kind of a little cut. But in this match, Austin, who's currently stumping on the balls of Bret Hart, ended up crimson masked, to use to borrow JR's phrase, as Austin comes in with another hard fist on Bret Hart. He ended up completely busted open by the use of the ring bell, and while he was in the sharpshooter, he powered out hard, the blood dripping down his face, a big roar of pain, and the cameras, instead of cutting away, went right in close up on this dramatic moment of this Stone Cold Steve Austin, the anti-hero, bravely battling his way out of the sharpshooter. And they did a really, really nice thing towards the end of the match. In the sharpshooter, Austin powers out. He manages to push Bret Hart off with every last bit of strength he has. I mean, but essentially the guy it was a very back and forth match, brilliantly done, but right at the end, Austin gets hit with the ring bell, and from then on, it's basically over. He's got no more strength left, but he just manages to push, just like that, in fact, just manages to push Bret Hart off. And all Bret Hart does is he goes, oh God, grabs the legs and puts it straight back on. And this time Austin has no more miracles left, and he passes out, but he won't tap. And that was the other key thing about the double turn, is that heels tend to tap out, faces tend to not submit. It's slightly different these days in the WWF, and people like Kurt Angle kind of changed that a little bit. Like, faces did start tapping out once we start getting into kind of like the 2003, 2004 type time, maybe a little bit earlier. But in this point of time, it was the bad guys that tapped out. For a face to, it was an admission of being inferior. So Stone Cold in the middle of the ring passes out, and the guest referee, Ken Shamrock, backdrop from Bret Hart there, calls the match to a close, and Stone Cold, unconscious, is helped from the ring by some referees as the crowd chants his name. A new hero was born, and a new villain, Bret Hart, was created. Now, why am I calling this the birth of the Attitude Era? Well, it was the big launch of Stone Cold, although he'd been bubbling up for a long time, which is why he was put over Bret Hart in this way. Although it's weird, though, because he lost to Bret Hart, but the way the match booking was laid out, he was the one that was kind of put over as a result of it. But what they realised from this match was that being bad was cool, swearing was fun, blood was good, and basically that opened the door to Attitude, as Bret Hart here has finally had enough of Stone Cold coming back and nails him with a sadistic piledriver and heads to the outside to get the ultimate equalizer at WrestleMania 13, the ring bell. Now, this was kind of the turning point at which the WWF started to have more violence in its matches, more hardcore matches, more wrestlers using swearing, Stone Cold giving the middle finger left, right and centre, anti-authority figures. It took a while to get going, but at the same point next year, when Stone Cold was challenging for the title, as Bret Hart tries to finally put away his adversary here, Stone Cold, it was Stone Cold versus McMahon, which has that whole idea of anti-authority, rebellion, attitude properly linked into that storyline at its absolute core. And of course, things like female managers or valets became far more popular. I mean, before this time, you had lots of male managers around the place. Once the time we got to the late 90s, though, male managers were basically history, and people were accompanied by these gorgeous women who were barely clothed, as Stone Cold, very, very dazed, staggers back towards the ring. Bret Hart, ring bell still in hand, although Austin does have a finisher if he can pull it off. And Bret just smashes him around the face. But this, in a sense, was Attitude. It was no longer a case of having great matches after this match, it was a case of turning up the raunch, getting the people shocked and hooked. I mean, they went too far. Eventually, they went too far, and they took the sex aspect too far, and you ended up with awful things like Katie Vick, about 5 or 6, maybe a little bit more, 7 years further on. But for a while, when things were just starting to turn this way, it led to a huge popularity boost for the WWE, the WWF, on the back of Stone Cold Steve Austin. And over the next few weeks, I hope to be looking at some more classic matches from the Attitude Era, and discussing what they meant for the participants in them, and discussing the importance of history. Now, for Bret Hart, he turned heel in America as a result of this match, which led up to his continued feud with Austin, and of course then also segued into his feud with Shawn Michaels that led up to the unfortunate Montreal incident. But in a way, Attitude also demonstrates the end of Bret Hart, because Bret Hart wasn't a face of Attitude. Shawn Michaels was with the Degeneration X. Stone Cold was. The Rock was. Bret Hart was kind of old-fashioned. He wasn't Attitude. So one of the reasons people have suggested that Bret Hart was allowed to kind of go to WCW, which led to the whole problem with the Montreal incident in the first place, was that he wasn't part of the way that the Vince McMahon wanted to take the company. And as Bret Hart again fails to finish off the valiant fight back of Stone Cold, he eventually, of course, left for WCW. But both of these men, Stone Cold and Bret, look back very, very favourably on this feud, because they actually feuded for the better part of 2 years as Austin fights back against the ring bell, and they feuded on both sides of the coin. They started the feud with Austin as face, as heel, and they finished the feud with Austin as the face, apart from, of course, of the very, very memorable Canadian Stampede pay-per-view, which has an amazing 10-man main event, maybe even 12-man actually, but if you've never seen it, go and check it out. It's the whole of the Hart Foundation versus the Legion of Doom, Austin, Ken Shamrock, and a couple of others. It's absolutely incredible, one of the hottest crowds you have ever seen, because to them, Bret was still the hero. Not everyone wanted to boo Bret as a result of this, and actually in Canada he became even more popular as Bret goes through his Moves of Doom routine. And as Bret Hart goes to lock in the sharpshooter on Stone Cold Steve Austin, he looks done for. The blood trickles from his face. Desperately crawling towards the ropes, screaming in agony, unable to get himself to there, but the miracle happens that Austin manages to power his way out of the sharpshooter, but it may be too little, too late, as Bret Hart has done such incredible damage to Austin. And so another one of the 5 moves of doom, the superplex, after the Russian leg sweep, the backbreaker, and all of the other, the elbow off the top rope, all of the other moves of Bret Hart coming to the fore here, and Austin really is a beaten, a bloody mess of a man, bulldogged into oblivion by the Hitman. And unfortunately, this match marks the end of some of Austin's more wrestling-based matches as well. A few months later, he had the unfortunate match with Owen Hart, which caused his neck injury. Unfortunately, in a move a little bit similar to this one, sorry. It meant he had to drastically change the way he wrestled, which again led to the more brawling style that highlighted in the Attitude Era as well. Now, unfortunately, that led to a lot less great matches than perhaps we'd seen during the Bret Hart era, but the emotion was absolutely there, even if the match quality wasn't. And Stone Cold, in this version, tapped out, but in real life, passed out, as Ken Shamrock watches on the replay again, showing just how brutal this match was. But if you thought this was brutal, then do go and check out the real thing. It will have you on the edge of your seat, even if you know how it's all gonna end up. I do hope you've enjoyed this little look at the Attitude Era, and if you look forward to hearing more stuff about that particular part of history, then do give me some suggestions for matches you'd like to see me recreate and talk over. And of course, do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I would love to have some more wrestling chat with you guys. So take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.